This is The Journey to 30 with your hosts, Michael, Esdrish, and Matthews. And I'm joined with today, Aaron, the Snagglewolf Martinez. And we're going to do a couple of... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say something about my name, but I'm not going to.
Oh, you should have.
Change my mind.
Okay. This is a new cast coming out, a short VOD for new players, directed at new players, to introduce you to the game of League of Legends. It's one of the most popular games on the computer as of right now. Over millions of people play it, and more people play and begin to play every single day. So our goal and aim is to help you learn how to play this game better.
Absolutely. It's it's already a huge game, but as popular as it is, there's still a ton of people who avoid League and MOBAs in general just because there's such a steep learning curve, and they've got, the reputation for having kind of a toxic community sometimes. So we are here to help ease you through that beginning transition period.
Yes, absolutely. So real quick, before we go into some of the beginning things that we want to go over for fundamentals, we want to tell you a little bit about League of Legends and what exactly it is. A lot of you already know that this is a MOBA, which means a massive online battle arena, very similar to Dota, very similar to Smite, although Smite's a little bit different since it's first person. But all that being said, it's very different than a lot of other computer strategy games that are out right now, like World of Warcraft or StarCraft or anything like that. Snaggle, what exactly is a MOBA?
Well, a MOBA is basically, it's a team game, and for the most part, especially talking particularly about League, it's 5-on-5, and basically its roots are in real-time strategy games. It started, like the original Dota started from a Warcraft 3 mod. So if you've played StarCraft or Warcraft, you kind of have the sort of basic mechanics down. You know what the screen's going to look like and how you're going to be controlling your characters, but you're only controlling one character at a time.
Right. So a MOBA is basically, you pit yourselves against each other. It's full-on PvP. League of Legends is a little bit different in the fact that they have some PvE just against bots, but the one thing you need to know is that it's all player-to-player interaction.
Yep. For better or for worse.
Yeah. Sometimes for worse. And so the company that came out with League of Legends, Riot, originally they were a couple of people that worked on Dota. They decided to branch off and start their own company and their own game, and it ended up being called League of Legends. And that was about 4.5 years ago that they started doing that. This game's been out for about almost 5 years, including the alpha and the beta. So Riot as a company is easily one of the best video game companies that I can name. They love their players, they love the community, they love their game, and they would do anything to make sure that you continue to play their game. So if for no other reason than the company being a solid one at best, you should play this game and continue to play this game and give it a chance, because I've been playing it for 4 years, and I gotta say I love this game probably more than any other game that I can think of, more than my favorites, classics, Zelda, Bioshock, all of those. This game is very special to me. So, and partly because Riot is such a good company about it.
Yeah, it's hard to find a company that is supportive of the community and has done as much as they do. I mean, the way that the business model is set up, like League of Legends is doing real well for them. I mean, they only have one game, but even despite the fact that they're making some pretty serious bank, like they are really good about supporting the game, supporting the community. When people have a problem with balance or champion stuff like that, they're always kind of looking to do what they can do to make it better. So, I mean, yeah, like you said, this game, I haven't been playing nearly as long as you have. I came in around when Lissandra was released, when the Mac client was out, because I had a Mac at the time. And yeah, like before that, I played a lot of different games, and since then, I've still play other stuff, but it's primarily been this game. Like League has kind of taken over.
Yeah, League's definitely taken over for me as well. It's becoming a second job for me, but I love it. I love this job. Absolutely love it. So all right, let's get into the fun stuff. Why are you here? Why are you playing League of Legends? You know, you wanted to learn this game. A lot of people talk about it, and a lot of people love it. We love it. And real quick, Trinity Force Podcast, a lot of you are becoming new to this game. You're probably becoming new to the Trinity Force Podcast as a whole. Well, the Trinity Force Podcast, everything about the podcast and GG Chronicle, the kind of like hierarchy to the podcast, everything about them wants to help you get better at this game. From the second that you start to play it to when you get to 30 and you start to get ranked. Everything that they want to do, their only mission with playing this game is to make you better at it. So
right.
I've been involved with the community for about a year and a half. I've been listening to the podcast for almost about 2 years. And they're the best group of people that I have ever found in a community in a video game. Like over my World of Warcraft guild, over my friends on, Warcraft or even StarCraft, any of that. Like, they're just fantastic people. So I recommend just continuing to stick with these guys. As we progressively get more in depth with our episodes with Journey to 30, we're going to start pointing towards the podcast you're going to listen to. And a lot of things, if you listen to the formal podcast, which is going to go live in about 50 minutes here, you're not going to really understand that, but that's okay, because our job here is to prepare you to get there so you'll understand what it means when they start talking about patch notes and when they start talking about, what's on the PBE. That's our goal for Journey to 30. Is to get you ready for the formal podcast so that you'll get better at the game from their perspective. We're just here to introduce you to it and get you familiar with acronyms, the map, champions, everything about that. So,
absolutely, there's there's a certain amount of knowledge that they kind of assume you've got on Trinity Force, which rightfully so. If they spent every episode going over super basic stuff, they would retread a lot of the same information. But the good thing about what we're going to do is give you those initial steps to actually get to the point where you're going to be learning a lot from them. And if you listen to that podcast, you are going to learn a ton. That's how I learned most of what I know about this game, is listening to those guys. So we're just kind of like getting into this game is not easy. Like as much as I love this game, there's a pretty steep learning curve to getting into League. And the best thing you can do is to do a bit of research to try and just learn the terms, learn how to play in your lane, stuff like that. And I mean, if you're listening to this, then you already are taking a pretty good step in that direction, and you're going to have an advantage over people who just jump in blind.
Yep, absolutely. So, that being said, that explaining to you where we come from, what the Trinity Force Podcast is, so that you can get a better understanding of exactly who we are. There's a lot of content that we like to bring out for you on even a daily basis, and this is just going to be one of the things that is coming out to the players. So, let's go ahead, open up right now. And I guess the best way to get into explaining what the game is talking about the map. So I'm going to bring up an image of the map of Summoner's Rift. It is the core map for 5v5. There are a couple other maps. There's the Dominion map and there's the Howling Abyss map, but most of those are used specifically for one game type. I mean, they're all used for one game type, but the one you're going to play most is going to be Summoner's Rift. So we're going to bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. This is the map for Summoner's Rift. And you're going to notice a few distinct things right off the bat. You're going to notice that it is definitely separated the colors separate it in the different sides. There's the purple team and the blue team, and then you have that middle area that everything is usually contested. Where the blue area stops and where the purple area stops, that's where your outer turrets are, and that's basically where you're going to be for the beginning portion of the map.
Yeah, they call that the laning phase. That's where you're just in your own individual lanes, and you're basically squaring off against your opponent and trying to get your CS as high as you can.
So what we're looking at right now is you have 3 lanes. You can argue that there's 4, and I'll get into what that 4th is in a second, but you have 3 core lanes, right? You have the top lane, which is obviously going to the top. For the blue, it goes straight up. For the purple, it goes straight to the left. That is your top lane. You have the middle lane. It happens to be the shortest lane, and that middle lane is literally just diagonal towards each other. And then you have the bot lane, which goes straight down, and for the blue team, it goes straight to the right. Those different lanes are where you're going to be ending up for the beginning part. You know this already. A lot of you do. But that 4th lane that I was talking to you about, that's called the jungle. Everything you see that isn't a lane is considered the jungle, minus the river, which is that middle contested area. So you have like purple jungle, blue jungle, and why we consider that a lane is when we get you to 30, our journey to 30, you're going to get to 30 and you're going to start seeing people going into the jungle. And the jungle is its own lane because you get experience and gold out of the jungle. So that's why it's very similar to a lane, because you're just going to get experience and gold just like you would in a lane. The only issue is that there's no immediate threat of a champion in that lane with you. And a lot of times there's not going to be, actually most of the time there's not going to be a friendly champion in the jungle with you either. So that's why it's also sometimes considered another lane. You want to go ahead and talk about like the river?
Yeah, the river, it's as you can see, it basically cuts the map in half diagonally, and that's kind of the boundary between your territory and the opponent's territory. But it's kind of a no man's land where, you know, you could find your opponent in there just as easily as they could find you in there. And at the bottom of the river, you can see where the circular section is around the middle. That's the dragon pit. And then on the opposite side of that is the Baron pit. And those are 2 pretty large creeps that we will probably get to explaining a little later. But essentially, aside from those 2 creeps, it's basically empty space where you're probably going to be squaring off a lot during the match.
Yeah, so the river is one of the things that you sometimes need to be cautious of, because we're going to get into acronyms here in a second and terminology, but real quick, the river is a dangerous place and the enemy jungle is a dangerous place simply because you don't know what's out there and you have no protection of your turrets. So if you get into trouble, you can't fall back to a turret very quickly that will help you, because a turret is basically your safe zone. If you get into a pickle and you need to leave and go back to base to heal, where you're going to be back in is next to a turret, because that thing will protect you. If you're too far from it, then you can't be protected. So, you need to immediately recognize that.
Yeah, if you head out into the river without any vision, you are taking your life in your hands. Things could go real bad real fast.
So, if you don't already know, vision is a term for just being able to see what you see. So, obviously, that makes sense. In League of Legends, in every single League of Legends, there's this thing called Fog of War. In every map of League of Legends, there's this thing called Fog of War. Anybody that's ever played any game knows what Fog of War is, and that is continuous in League of Legends. So there are different ways to grant yourself vision of an area. Wards are one of them. There are some abilities that allow you to see into a specific place, but the best way to scout something out is with a ward. So let's go ahead and get into terminology. I'm gonna make the map a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna bring up something that we already kind of had written up just to be ready for terminology. You can read them as you go, but we're gonna go over each one as well. So here is a few basic terminologies that we want to go over. You're gonna see them right there on the right. So terminology that you will be rather confused with or won't know immediately are these. And I'm going to talk about Gank real quick because we were talking about how it's dangerous to go into, the enemy jungle. Explain what a gank is, simply because Fog of War, and we were kind of already talking about that.
A gank is when someone on the opposing team decides to ruin your day. And the reason why vision is so important in this game is because if you don't know what's waiting in the river, an opponent quite often will come out of those bushes and either by themselves or assisting the people on their team in their lane will try to kill you or get you to burn some of your more important abilities. So a gank basically is when someone comes out of the Fog of War into your lane to try and put a hurting on you.
Yeah, so we wanted to get that out of the way because we were already talking about how dangerous it is to go into the river and enemy jungle without wards, but there's also a certain amount of danger to just ignoring the fact that you can't see there as well, because you're prone to getting ganked if you can't see it. So we're going to go over some statistics, like just what it means when you're looking at stats. A lot of these things you can look in-game. When you're in-game and you want to see what your stats are, of course you have to the bottom left, you have your whole stat bar, but if you want to see a little bit more in-depth on what's going on your champion, all you have to do is press the C button. That's for the character's champion. You press that, a window will pop up and it will tell you all of your core stats, from everything from your health to a little bit more complicated things like spell vamp or lifesteal. So we'll go ahead and start with the main damage dealing statistics, and that's attack damage and ability power, shortened for AD and AP.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the attack damage, basically every champion does attack damage with their auto attacks, but there are also champions whose main abilities work off of attack damage. So if you hear people talking about an attack damage champion, for example, Garen, Yasuo, Marksman that we will get into, they're all attack damage champions. They basically are going to do they're going to do a lot of damage with their auto attacks and with their abilities because they scale off attack damage.
Yeah. So, and it gets a little bit confusing because when we talk about ability power, that is different than like actual abilities. Some abilities, and I say abilities meaning your Q, W, E, and R if you have the normal hotkeys, your Q, W, E, and R, your main spells, those can scale off of ability power or they can scale off of attack damage. So don't get confused when we say an ability. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're talking about ability power. We're talking about the champion's ability to do things. So if you've ever played the tutorial, you've played Ashe, and Ashe has a few abilities. One of her abilities is called Frost Shot. When you activate it, it allows you to shoot a bolt that, slows people, or your Hawkeye, which allows you to shoot it into an area to get yourself vision, or your ultimate that allows you to shoot this giant arrow and blow people up. Well, those are all abilities. That doesn't necessarily mean that they scale with ability power. You see what I mean here? So you gotta be aware, you need to be wary of that because, sometimes it'll scale with AD even though it's attack damage. Sometimes it'll scale with AP even though it's ability power. So, go ahead.
That's why it's such a good idea if you're starting to learn a champion or you're interested to just do a little research beforehand, whether it's looking in the client or going on a website like the League of Legends wiki, just to find out what those abilities do and what their damage comes from.
Because it does get sometimes really confusing. And say you've chosen a champion and you're already in game and you don't exactly know if his abilities scale off of AP or AD. An easy way to look is just to look at his ability and look at what you're going to see something. It's going to be like, for example, Annie. She's a little girl. She's red and she, shoots fire out of her hands. Well, a lot of her abilities they're all red. But if you were to like hover over the tooltip for it, it'll say, this ability shoots out a ball of fire that does 60 plus, and it'll have in parentheses a number. And that number will either be blue or it will be like brownish. And depending on which one it is, that will tell you whether it's an attack damage scaling ability or an AP scaling ability. And scaling means that an ability gains more damage the more AP or AD you have. So if you have a lot of AP, it's going to do more damage.
Yeah.
And then it will say magic damage or physical damage. That's pretty straightforward. Physical damage is attack damage, and magic damage is ability power damage, AP damage, magic damage. So those are the two offensive stats that we have.
Use your tooltips. They're your best friend.
Absolutely, your best friend. So, in counter to that, we have two defensive statistics, and well, technically three, because health is technically a defensive statistic, but two core ones that counter attack damage and ability power, and those are armor and magic resist.
Yeah, those are, they're pretty straightforward if you think about them. Armor is obviously going to stop physical attacks, and magic resist is going to resist magic. So if you are against an opponent who you know does a lot of attack damage, you're going to want to build some armor to try and negate some of that, and vice versa for magic resist. And
again, you can easily see armor and magic resist are really nice because you can look and see how much damage you're negating just by hovering over your character slot in the bottom left hand. So say you have like 35 magic resist and you hover over and it says a nice little number, this will negate, I think it's like 28% magic damage. So it's very, very clear in saying how much MR you have, how much magic resist you have, and what it will do for you.
Yeah.
On top of that, I mentioned health. Health is technically a defensive stat. The more health you have, the longer you're going to be able to live. So, just a rule of thumb: if you are getting semi-familiar with this game, and you don't know if a champion deals magic damage or armor, or physical damage, but you know that you need to build some sort of defensive stat, just try building health, because health is just a generally good thing to build when you don't know what to build. Because you'll live longer, and that's kind of the whole process of all of this. But the last stat we want to talk about in the character, the last two stats we want to talk about in the character, they're a little bit more utility based, and those are attack speed and movement speed, also short for ATS and MS.
Yep, the attack speed and movements, those are also pretty straightforward if you think about them. Attack speed increases the speed of your attack, and movement speed increases your movement. And like for movement speed, basically every champion is going to want movement speed. It's you buy boots to increase your movement speed, and we'll get into items in another episode, but movement speed is always good. That you can get into fights faster, you can get out of fights faster. And attack speed, specific champions, which again we'll get into later, specific champions benefit much more from attack speed than others do. Some you don't ever build an attack speed item, or you don't have to worry about it. But that basically increases how fast you auto attack.
Yep. So all of those champion statistic acronyms you're going to want to remember, you're going to want to know, because they're going to be used a lot, like very frequently, so it's just good to know. And especially if you continue, which I highly advise you continue to stick with us here at T-Force, we're going to be using those acronyms. Oh, and we didn't talk about true damage.
Ah, yes,
true damage,
the worst of the damage.
True damage. As of right now, I don't think there's over 10. There's not even over 10 champions out of the almost 120 that we have that deal true damage, unless you have a summoner spell called Ignite, and that Ignite does do true damage. But all of that being said, it is still something that you need to know, because true damage goes straight through resistances, and the only counter to true damage is health. So it's not something that you really need to worry about, but it's something you need to know when someone says, oh, this champion does true damage. Well, I don't know what true damage is. True damage is exactly that. It goes straight through resistances, only does damage to, it does the full damage to health, cannot be negated by anything.
Yep.
Okay, so those are done. We have a couple on the right there for the terminology that we wanted to say. I just put it in there, TP for teleport, just because it is something that gets shortened a lot. we don't really need to talk about it all that much. It's very straightforward, and what teleport is, you can teleport somewhere. But yeah, that's what TP is. If you're confused about, we talked about ganking, so we're gonna go ahead and talk about pots and CS. We'll start with pots because CS is a little bit more longer of a subject.
Yeah, pots are your potions. They're an item that you buy to refill some of your health. So if people talk about popping pots, that just means using some of your potions. They're a good early item to buy just to keep your health up.
Or mana.
Also, yeah, or mana. Yeah.
Yeah, either or. But yeah, that's what a pot is. I knew several of my friends that didn't exactly know what a pot was when I referred to it, so I decided to include that just for some clarity's sake, because some people just don't know. So that is what a pot is. CS. It is short.
CS is very important.
Yeah, CS is very important. It's not short for. It is short for farm, but it's very specific. It's called creep score.
Yep.
So what's a creep?
A creep are those little dudes that spawn out of your base and they wander down your lane and they attack the other guys, little dudes, and the other champions, and they auto spawn constantly from your base, and they basically, I mean, getting your creep score up is a whole episode, but they basically, your creep score is how many last hits you get, and last hitting is when, like, if you leave the creeps alone, they'll kill each other. But if you get the last hit on a creep, your last hitting, you get bonus gold, and that's the most important skill you can work on early.
Yeah.
So when you look at your stat to see your CS, that's how many last hits you've got. And that's how much bonus. That's not how much bonus gold, but that's how many times you successfully got that bonus gold. You want your CS to be real high.
Yeah, CS it's one of the things that even professional players can continuously work on.
Yeah.
Like people in the LCS, if you know what the LCS is, it's the League of Legends Champion Series. It's basically the best of the best. They get paid to do exactly what any sport pays you to do. They play at a high level play. So everyone can always be better at CSing. CSing is the verb that we use. To CS is to creep score, is to farm. So this is how you get gold in the game. This is the best, most effective way of getting gold in the game. A lot of people, you'd be like, oh, well, I could get a kill. That's a lot of gold. But actually, the best way to get gold in this entire game is through killing minions. And not just minions. Jungle minions in the jungle, those are creeps as well. And you can kill them, and they give you gold as well. So...
And that's a mistake that is easy to make when you're first starting. You get in lane and you see your opponent, and it feels really good to hit your buttons and start throwing a bunch of junk on them and watching their life tick down. But it's really easy early on to ignore the creeps to attack your opponent, and that, as fun as that is, that's a bad idea, because that's not getting you bonus gold, and that's not getting you better items.
So it's definitely something that you need to keep in mind. So those are the few terminologies that we wanted to go over, just kind of opening up. We didn't want to get too in depth with this one, because it's kind of
that's an episode on its own.
Yeah, we have a plan for how we want to go about teaching you how to CS, and it's going to require a little bit more finesse that we can fill in just our usual 30 to 45 minute time slot with all the other things we wanted to talk about. So those are your beginning acronyms and terminology, and that is your map. So I do believe that coming up here, we're almost short on time, but we did cover a lot of what we wanted to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these two items. Those are for you. Just going to do that real quick. All right, so I can go to my other document. So, we didn't talk about CDR.
We didn't, or feeding.
Oh, we're bad.
Shut this show down.
We're bad. Okay, well.
Adam's going to fire us. He's going to fire us. I know it.
Okay, so real quick, because we do have a couple more minutes, we'll talk about feeding, and then CDR is a little bit more important. But so feeding. So say you're in lane, you're in the bot lane, you're chilling with your Malphite or whoever you're playing with, and someone comes down to your lane, and they gank you and they get a kill on you and you're like, crap, shucks, I died. They came down, they killed you, and you're like, dang it. So you're back at the base, you respawn, and you're 0-1 with 20-25 CS or something like that, and you're heading back to lane. And that guy, that jerk, he came again, and he kills you again. Now you're 0-2, you're respawning. You're like, well, crud, that guy keeps coming. I think I just need to be a little bit more aware. So you get back down, and by now you're starting to notice that your enemies are getting a lot stronger than you, and you're kind of getting a little bit afraid. And oh, luck would have it, they kill you again. At this point, you're 0-3. You're 0-3. You're behind on your CS, and they're starting to get really, really fed. This means that you have fed them. You're feeding them kills. You're feeding them gold. You're feeding them experience. This is what feeding is. When you consistently die to champions and are just yielding over gold and money to them. That's what feeding is.
Yeah, feeding's real bad, you guys. It's also a really good way to get your teammates to yell at you.
Yeah.
You know, when I started playing this game, I can't even remember where I heard it, but one of the number one rules I kept in mind that I wasn't always successful with, but the rule is don't die.
Yep,
like dying is one of the worst things you can do early on. Like you say, every time you die, you are giving your opponents an advantage, and yeah, feeding's bad, guys. You just don't want to feed.
Yeah. So if there's one thing you can take out of this beginning to learn how to play the game, just don't die. Don't die. Do everything you can to not die. If you don't know whether you should go back and try and last hit a couple minions at your 1/4 health, then just go back. Just go heal. It's fine. Yeah. It's better than you dying.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, you're gonna die playing this game. That's unavoidable, and there are situations where, I mean, not every time you die is completely your fault, but when it goes from like, oh, I died to, oh, I'm feeding, is when you're making silly mistakes and almost giving up those kills to the other team. And again, that's, we'll cover that more later, but you just want to be careful. Like you said, if the choice is put yourself in danger to get that creep or back off to your tower, back off to your tower. Like, just play safe. That's the best thing to do when you're learning.
Yeah. So okay, real quick, because we only got a few more minutes here, but we're going to talk about what CDR is, and that is short for cooldown reduction. What's a cooldown?
Yes. Cooldown, that is, your abilities all have cooldowns, so you can't use them constantly. And cooldown reduction, for the most part, lowers the amount of time it takes from between uses of those abilities.
Right, so I was talking about Annie earlier, right? I was talking about Annie. Well, her Q, her fireball of death and doom, that little girl shoots that out, has a cooldown of about, I think it's like 6 seconds at the first rank, somewhere around there. Well, if you have cooldown reduction, you can lower that cooldown. So cooldown reduction, it caps at a certain amount. It caps at 40%. 40% cooldown is what you can get. So after a couple items, it usually caps off and you can't get any more. That's to stop you from being able to just spam it on like a half-second cooldown, because that wouldn't be fair. You would run out of mana, but at the same time, you being able to do those abilities so quickly, it wouldn't be fair to the game. So it caps out at 40%, almost 50%. Basically, like if you get capped out on your cooldown reduction, it halves the amount of time that it originally started at. So a 6-second cooldown negated by 20% means that if it's 6 seconds times 0.2, that reduces it. Well, that's 1/5 of a second, or 1/5 of the time. So 1/5 of 6 seconds is approximately just over a second. So reduce it down to about 4 seconds and 4.8 seconds, somewhere around there. So that's what that means. Cooldown reduction, you'll notice it too. So as soon as cooldown reduction gets implemented into your character, you'll see if you go over to the tooltip, oh, that's now a 3.6 second cooldown rather than a 5.2, something like that. So it's definitely noticeable when your cooldowns are getting affected by cooldown reduction.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think that is it for that. We're gonna cut this cast up to a wrap. Next time on the Journey to 30, we are going to talk about beginning champions and who we think you should play to get a kind of handle on the game. If you're not even level 25 yet, you're not going to really know what the meta is, and I'm not going to confuse you, but we're not going to talk about who you should jungle or who you should mid lane. We're going to talk about champions and who you should start out with. So that's what we got next time for you. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, we have an email address. There's always the email address for the main podcast. That's feedback@trinityforcepodcast.com. Or if you want to talk to us specifically that do this Journey to 30, that email is Battle Arena, BATTLE Arena, right there for you, Battle Arena at trinityforcepodcast.com. And we check that every single day, so we're more than welcome to respond to those for you. You got anything else, Snaggle?
If you want to talk to us on Twitter, you can check us out there. I am at Doc_chicken, and you are at Asterdition.
Asterdition, yeah.
Asterisk. I said it wrong too after making fun of Adam for saying it wrong.
He says it wrong all the time. Asterdition. It's just Asterdition.
I'm gonna blame him.
Or you can also add us in game. You know, we are more than welcome to help you out in game. My in-game name is Asterdition as well. Everything I am is Asterdition. ASDERITION. And Snagglewolf's is, I think it's just Snagglewolf.
Snaggle.
Yeah.
You betcha.
So we are on. I'm on every day. So if you need to get a hold of me, you can go ahead and do that. Also, when you're in game, go ahead and do us a favor. When you're in game, click on your view friends list, and over to the side, next to that, there's your chat room that you can go on. If you go in there and you go to create or join a public chat room, you can go and type T-Force, TFORCE, and sit in there. That is the main chat channel for the Trinity Force podcast. We all sit in there. Everyone from the formal to us to everybody. So if you ever need
it's a great community.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's a lot of a pretty good range of skills in there, from bronze all the way up to plat. So, you can probably find some people to play with and who can help you out.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So we're gonna cut this into a wrap, and we're gonna relinquish this over to Adam and the guys on T-Force proper. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're gonna do this every single week, and we hope to see you next time. Also, this will be up on the YouTube channel.
Yep.
Right, so Trinity Force's YouTube, I think it's just T-Force Podcast in YouTube. So if you go ahead and look them up, we have plenty of videos up, so it shouldn't be too difficult to find us.
Yeah, it's /T-Force Podcast.
All right, guys, so that's it for that. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.